Donc, on a des 4 sujets, des experts à la matière, comme on dit en français, des subject matter experts, et qui, avec ceux, on va s'entretenir donc pour ces prochaines minutes. Ce qui est intéressant de ce panel-ci, I'll switch in English because since we're going to do the panel in English, with these 4 subject matter experts, I have a slide deck of questions which they do not have any clue what I have to ask them. So this will be fun, you know? And so, if you didn't recognize me, I'm Steve Waterhouse, because usually I have a white shirt and a tie, and guess what? I don't have any today. So yeah, I'm buzzing here. And so, I would like to, first of all, to have Justin Grudzien, to introduce himself, and I'll have each of these panelists to present themselves to let you know who they are and where they come from. So, Justin.
All right, hello. My name is Justin Grudzien. I am currently the Chief Information Security Officer over at DoorDash out of the U.S., and my responsibilities are I run the Information Security Department, and I also run the IT department.
Thank you, sir. Let's go with Cheryl Biswas.
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Cheryl Biswas. I am a cyber threat intelligence specialist with TD Bank. Been doing this for years. I've done a variety of roles as well as assessments, security audits, quite familiar with that, but my passion is being able to find and identify threat actors and emerging threats and then make that understandable to everybody who could be impacted.
Awesome. Kendra Cooley, please.
Hi, I'm Kendra. I am currently unemployed. But most recently, I worked for a couple of U.S.-based companies, Flock Safety and Webflow. A lot of my experience has been building security programs from the ground up as the first security hire. So,
thank you. And the last one, Mehdi Talei.
Yes, hi. So Mehdi Talei. I have a background of infrastructure, and currently I'm the Director of Cybersecurity and Compliance at Dollarama. Basically, we try to protect one of the most successful retailers in Canada.
Excellent. So we got a great diversity here of people, great experiences. So let's start with that first trick question I have for you. It would sound like, what is the largest issue you encountered to grow or enhance cybersecurity in your either current or past organization?
we don't have enough time.
Yeah, but let's short it up and sum it up. Let's go with you.
Oh my goodness. I would say I could boil down a lot of my experiences into what the largest issues have been for growing or enhancing cybersecurity programs, just being a lack of leadership involvement at the very top. I mean, if leadership is not bought into your security program, you're going to go absolutely nowhere.
Very good point, because I'm coming from infrastructure team, and at the same time I was managing cybersecurity, and in the past I had the shared resources in the team. I had a resource who was supposed to work on cybersecurity, but when the operations take over and you have ups down, then no one cares anymore about cybersecurity. Everybody should jump on operations, bring it back up, because we need to have the revenue, right? 2.5 years ago, when the upper management figured out that the cybersecurity was important and we separated cybersecurity from infrastructure, that was the boom of the growth of cybersecurity team.
I've worked in mostly e-commerce companies out of the U.S., and I would say the largest issue is that they need cybersecurity, but they don't want it. A lot of the projects that I've worked on, time to market was one of the critical factors of the business. So when that is the primary motivating factor of the business, and you hear cybersecurity and the word control, that automatically means we're going to slow down the business. So what I've found is that leadership buy-in has been one of the hardest things, because as cybersecurity professionals, we have to really learn how to make the business agile and not slow it down. And working now in a Silicon Valley company, time to market is even greater than when I was working in like a Midwest company or an East Coast company in the US. So I would definitely say convincing leadership that, you know, you can still have cybersecurity and still have an agile business and time to market has been my biggest challenge.
I'll just speak independently and not on behalf of my employer, but having worked with big enterprises, the challenge is definitely getting that top-down leadership buy-in. You have to have the confidence from the people who are doing the jobs at the levels below that management is with them, has a plan, understands the plan, and is committed. It doesn't work from this way up. So that's one of the biggest parts. The other is competing priorities. You need to be able to know what is most important for your particular organization and not be distracted by, we call it the new shiny. There is really no silver bullet. And another feature that is a challenge, I think, especially when you get into bigger organizations, are silos. Communication and collaboration are key, but it's very difficult to build those when you have a complex bureaucratic structure.
And it goes also with security by obscurity, eh? I've seen that often. All right, but on these words, Cheryl, could you pursue on the order to secure, in order to secure an organization, what should be the main focus?
You need to know what your crown jewels are, and in that essence, what would bring you to a dead stop? That is your ultimate priority. What is you live, breathe, and die by this, and you start from there, and then you will build around that.
Yeah, obviously, I'm not going to disagree with that. What I'll add to it is you have to understand how you can actually get things done. So when you look at a company and how they do business and what their actually company culture is, I try to find a security program that melds well with the company culture, because I find that even if you have the best intentions, if you are going against company culture, it is impossible to implement anything.
I love the word company culture. I love it because the cybersecurity frameworks don't apply 100% to all the companies in the same way. You need to know your business to be able to protect whatever is important for the business. For the retailer, the POS is the most important piece of the equation. For the hospitals, it's the medical records. So company culture and what is important for the company, they're going to help you to build your roadmap and achieve what you have to achieve in cybersecurity.
Kendra.
Is there anything to add? No, I'm just kidding. I would agree with everything that was said there. I think company culture is really, really important. And I can definitely say, you know, based on what Justin said, I once made the mistake of joining an organization fairly early in my career, but, you know, was helping to build their corporate security program. And I was like, I know, here's this checklist of things that we need to do. And I learned very quickly that that was a great way to make a lot of enemies. And so, you know, over the last few months, I've been interviewing with a lot of different organizations looking for my next opportunity. And one of the questions that I get time and time again is, what are you going to do in your first 3 months? And I'm like, I'm going to observe your business, because I'm not going to come in tomorrow and say, oh, you don't have two-factor authentication? Let's slam that in there, because it's going to create this ripple effect in the organization, no matter how big or small. And so those first 3 months, especially of establishing a security program, is absolutely critical.
Makes perfect sense. Now I'm going to switch to Justin with this first question. With this question, as your first answer would be very important. How does the data sovereignty impacts your security program?
This is a question I would have liked to have seen ahead of time. Define what you mean by data sovereignty.
Well, as your organization, your company operates, let's say, in the US and Canada, how is perceived that data sovereignty? Is it most important for the company that the data be stored absolutely in the US, or would it matter that it would be, for the Canadian customers, be harbored in Canada and, of course, US customers in the US?
So I'll give you my personal opinion on this, which may not be the same as my professional opinion. Generally, what I would do as a security leader is for countries that have, let's say, radically different privacy laws than the US, which is where we're primarily based. I would advise the company very strongly to keep the data local to where those laws are. The problem is anytime you move data, so we're expanding a lot in the European Union right now. We saw Privacy Shield go away. So all of the sort of laws that protected companies transferring data across international bounds don't really work very well because the US is just, privacy there is not as important, let's just say right now, legally, as it is in other countries. So I actually strongly believe that as we grow our European presence, our data is going to be in Ireland because that is a better place where we can make sure we follow the laws. It'll be completely isolated and segregated. For Canada, I actually don't know. We bring the data back to the US, so I'm not entirely up to speed on Canadian law, but certainly Europe and Asia, our goal is to keep the data as close to the customer as we can in territories that follow those laws.
Sorry about that. On that matter of Canadian data sovereignty, Vanessa, she's here. Hook up with her, and she'll be able to bring you up to speed in quite a short time. Mehdi.
I guess it's mostly a question of the legal and the lawyers. So yeah, Vanessa is the best person to answer that question. But since I manage the PCI program of Dollarama and in my old job also, I know that the transactions, they need to remain in Canada. It's an obligation. For the rest, again, it's a question of legal. Now, recently with the Law 25, I guess it has become a bit more complicated. Yeah, somehow. But yeah, for the payment transactions, I'm sure that we need to keep them in Canada.
Kendra?
This has been a painful part in a lot of the companies that I've worked with, because a lot of times when you start talking about expanding into other countries and what that means to transfer data across borders and having employees in various locations and things like that, you look to your engineering teams and they're like, oh yeah, like we're good. Cool, show me. Like, do you have a data flow diagram that shows that this data is staying local to where it's supposed to? What do you think? Any data flow diagrams? No, yeah, that's about the look that you get when you start asking those questions. So, but also on kind of expanding on that too, a lot of times when you start talking about data needing to move outside of other locations, kind of to Justin's point, setting up infrastructure in those locations so that it stays where it's supposed to. Companies don't always think about the added cost or complexity that comes along with that, and then building a security program on top of that to meet the laws and regulations of those locations is very complex. And oftentimes we're looked at as the people that should know or have all the answers to that, and we're learning right along with the rest of the organization. These regulations are popping up all the time.
And can you add to that, Cheryl?
Just a little bit, because this really was comprehensive, and yes, go talk to Vanessa. Whatever size of organization you are, you will need to have a privacy expert. It's complicated. There are different privacy policies by province, then by country. You need to know before you go into a new area what those privacy laws are for you. And you can't expect your security people to necessarily know it. This is a very specialized field. It's worth the investment to get the services of somebody external, if you can't have an internal person who can really guide you so that you're not relying on the engineering department for this solution.
So I just have one quick thing to add that I just thought of as the others were speaking. I think what concerns me more than where the data's at is who actually can access the data. So I've worked at companies where we've had employees in dozens of countries, just like I do right now. And if I know that employees of a country where the laws are less strict are going to access, my my gut instinct is to move the data to a place where they're more strict and not have those employees who have, are in those countries access the data. And I can do that if I leave the data there. I can't if I centralize it in a single place. If I centralize the data in the US, let's say, that means that all the US employees and whoever else accesses the US data can access it. If I leave the data in Europe, I know that only European employees are going to access that data. So that's probably more what would really push me to that, is just I want to keep the data safe. That's my job, and I want to make sure that only those people can access the data who are supposed to.
Great points here. Now, on this next question, I'll ask Kendra to answer last because she already provided some answers to that. So what's the biggest mistake to avoid when building a security program? Let's start with Cheryl.
One size does not fit all. If you're going to build a security program, it has to be tailored to your needs, who you are, what your culture is. So you have to do the legwork up. So the biggest mistake would be rushing headlong into it and buying a pre-made solution, just to make it as simple as possible.
I guess, as you mentioned, we kind of answered that question. It really is about the type of the business that you have, your crown jewel. And maybe one more point I can add is do an assessment to see what's the posture of your cybersecurity right now, and then build the roadmap based on the business requirement and what's coming out of the assessment, and move forward. Obviously, we need to adjust the roadmap year by year because there's new attacks, you have new vulnerabilities, new systems are in production, and you're exposed to new attacks. But I think the business requirement and the assessment is going to help us to build a good roadmap.
Well, I'm sorry, everybody, that you get a bunch of panelists who all agree with each other, but I think one thing that I'll add to that is I heard somebody a couple of years ago at a security conference in Chicago, where I'm from, say, data is our new asset, and companies need data to do their business. And if we kind of hold on to these traditional security program views where all the data must be locked away from everybody, most new businesses will fail, especially ones that aren't highly regulated. So I think the one thing that I'll say about the biggest mistake is if you just assume that all programs are built, whether it's ISO or NIST or any of the other frameworks out there, you will fail. And what we need to do as security professionals is figure out how we can give people access to the data in a safe way where we can track it and protect it, because just locking it up now doesn't make any sense at a lot of companies. So that would be the one thing I'd add.
Yeah, saying no does not make you friends, that's for sure. Let's see, I would add to that if you're thinking of starting a security program in your organization, you better know why. Is it because you have enterprise customers coming to you asking for SOC 2 or certain verification that you have things in place? Cool, let that be your driving force. But don't hire security professionals who are coming in expecting to build a full-scale program and then have them pigeonholed into just this checkbox of things that need to be completed. On the other side of that too, a lot of security programs are being built with like the SDLC process in mind and making sure that the application is secure, but then you're leaving out a critical part of your organization, which is the corporate aspect of security. So I would say biggest mistake to avoid, not knowing your why when you're building your security program. And that doesn't mean that it can't evolve over time, but know where you're starting and where you want to go.
Yeah, if I just add one more advice, you were talking about the enemies, and it reminds me my colleagues of infrastructure team, my ex-employees. Since I moved to cybersecurity, they have become my enemies because now I'm on cybersecurity, I'm a bad guy. And I'm a showstopper, right? So make friends and explain them what the cybersecurity is and what is the purpose of the program. The purpose of the program is not to stop the projects, is not to slow them down. The purpose of the program is to protect the organization, and this protection, this program should be backed up by upper management. The board should be on board, your cybersecurity committee should be on board, the CIO should be on board. When you are backed up and you explain your colleagues what the purpose is, then they will accept it as an add-on and not a showstopper.
Additionally to that, the placement of your security program in your organization is absolutely critical.
What do you mean by placement?
If you bury your security organization deep in engineering, you're never going to have that, upper level view of everything that's happening. So it's very important to know that where you place your security organization does have an impact on your program as a whole. And actually, Patrick and I are giving a talk on that on Saturday, so I hope to see you all there.
Nice plug, yeah.
Good plug.
But at the same time, we have this deep down problem with many organizations, whatever governance, whether public or private, that cybersecurity is buried under a fourth hat of responsibility beneath the C-level suite. And up until recently, here in Quebec, there's now a dedicated ministry for that, and that sound off the message to say, take cybersecurity seriously. Just like in the US, you had the Office of Cybersecurity Director that was erected in October 2021. That send off again that strong message for everyone to understand cybersecurity is again on top of the agenda of preoccupations. I don't know yet if the industry is catching on that message, but the warning is out. On that matter, what about metrics and KPI? Which one of them are most impactful for your security program? Or the board? Or does your staff simply hate it?
Well, I guess I'll go first, because this is one of the things I'm dealing with right now. So I was told by my CFO that we need what's called capital metrics. So these are metrics that are basically influence revenue. So we're a security department. We are the only department ever that I know of in a business that has to have a zero loss expectancy and spend as little money as possible. So it's an impossible task, but I need metrics to measure my influence on the business. I will tell you what we're starting with. So I know the speaker at lunch was sort of talking about this. So we're looking at sort of mean time to detect critical and high vulnerabilities and what our resolution time is. And that is going to be the first judge of how quickly our program can identify and close major issues that are in our software and our platform. So that's going to be the first one. On the other side for the board cares about those things, but they also care about sort of our risk register. Now, not necessarily our whole register, but our top risks. So our compliance and our GRC team, governance, risk, and compliance, they're creating a risk register now that is both going to have the quantitative, right, that loss expectancy for a risk, and the qualitative, like what is our relative, and I'm going to use this word forever, relative resilience. Like how resilient are we to a certain kind of attack, whether using MITRE or something else to determine that. But there's going to be a couple metrics. I only have the vulnerabilities right now, but I have reached out to my peers in the industry, and there are no set of security metrics or KPIs that everybody uses. It's all tailored to a company. So you have to kind of find what works for you, but it's that and the risk register, I think, that the board really cares about.
Very difficult to prepare the metrics in cybersecurity because it's not tangible like infrastructure or network that you say, hey, I closed 55 tickets this month. Seth from Tenable, who's talking about 75,000 vulnerabilities. What does that mean? It's all relative. It depends on the context. I've stopped 55,000 spams this month. Okay, is it good? Is it bad? Nobody has any idea. So what I've done and I have been doing is I prepared the metrics based on the exercises that we do currently. Let's say we do the training program, and I prepare the metrics of the people who followed and terminated the program or the training in a period of time that we have defined. And I present that to I present that to the committee, the cybersecurity committee. And quarter by quarter, I show them how we get better or bad or worse. And another metric that I present is the click-through during the phishing campaign. So let's say, I don't know, the first campaign that we launched, nobody was aware of, and the people, they were not used to it. So I'm giving you the numbers, like 35% of failures. And then 1 year later, because we have been doing that quite often, we improved, we got to 12% of failure. So we are getting better. So it shows that our awareness program is working fine or not. Other metrics that, those metrics that Justin, sorry, was talking about are coming from the SOC. Obviously, whether it is the time to remediate, time to contain. Also, I present them to the committee. Another metric that I present to them is the vulnerability management. If I install the patches on my Windows server in 15 days, and they ask me to do it better, I present the progress of this requirement of the business quarter by quarter.
So basically what you're saying, anything can be just a KPI.
Totally. Whatever you execute in terms of cybersecurity that you can measure, it can be a KPI.
But then again, when you say you had these percentages of accomplishments, that's what I mean. You can toss out any arguments and you say this we'll be measuring that in the coming days and months.
Yes, and you can even put the service level agreements, and then you say, okay, based on what I agreed with the committee, let's say 15 days patching my Windows server, am I good compared to that service level agreement, or I'm worse? So, and then you can actually go for the budget. If they insist on an objective and you are not able to achieve that objective, you have enough reason to say that, hey, I need resources, I need money to get to what you are asking me.
Understood. Kendra?
Yeah, those are all really good points. For me, when I'm looking at metrics for my programs, I'm trying to tie things back to specific controls, because a lot of the questions that I end up getting asked by CEOs and boards is, well, why? Why are we tracking this thing? Why do we care? And there was a period of time where I was simply providing metrics like, oh yeah, this month we had 50 critical, 20 medium, blah, blah, blah. And my CEO would be like, those are vanity metrics. Like, what does it actually mean? And so to actually pull that back into something meaningful for the business based on a control that we decided to implement was really helpful. One metric that I love to give that hasn't been mentioned here, though, is reports from employees, because I find that shows how much engagement you have in the business and how much people are actually actively thinking about security. So I know a lot of folks get annoyed when people send in a spam email like, oh, I think this is phishing. I love getting those, because that to me means that you didn't click on it and you thought enough to check with security. And ultimately, that shows that the culture, your security culture, is growing and improving over time. And that actually does make the board really happy. Now, on the other side of team members hating KPIs and metrics, I have found that the repetitive nature of KPIs and metrics becomes very monotonous to them. When the numbers continue to increase, they can visibly see that there's a lot of work to be done based on the number of folks on the team, but we're not getting headcount. We're not getting additional dollars to spend, and that's when it becomes problematic.
These are all excellent points, and having seen it at a very, very large, at an enterprise level, yes, you absolutely need to have them. Meaningful metrics, not just vanity numbers, not just doing it for the sake of doing it. And it is an arduous process at times. You will probably go through 2 or 3 different systems to be able to best gather the information and then figure out how best to present it so that the receiving audience, and it's key to know who your audience is, which is the upper levels, how best to represent this information, to tell them the story. Keep them interested, give them something succinct and impactful. And that ensures that you can get the support and the funding you need to do better. It's also a really great way to flag an area where there's a problem, because if you're consistently seeing bad numbers in here, you have a way to go in and justify improvement. And that just makes everybody better all around.
But we all know there are some managers that just love to have crafts, figures, and they sleep well at night knowing they have something to tackle upon the next morning and just hassle everyone, you know? So yeah, we have all sorts of metrics around, but like you say, you guys, it has to mean something and it has to produce results that will enhance overall the cybersecurity. So on the next one here, what is a common misconception you experienced about the role of a CISO, head of security, or as a security team lead? Well, you're all laughing about that. That's funny. Oh, okay. Well, Kendra, why don't you go and start that ball?
Now we know everything. We don't, and this goes back to Cheryl's point earlier.
Don't burst my bubble. Come on,
Steve. This goes back to what Cheryl said earlier about privacy. We're often looked to as privacy experts, and a lot of us don't have that background or training, and you can kind of lose some credibility if you stand up and you say, "I don't know, but I will go find out."
I'm actually giving a talk tomorrow that is going to touch on this a little bit, but I would say one of the things I was surprised about the role is that you have to, as a security leader, you have to be a universal translator to other avenues of the business. So for example, nobody is going to talk security out in the C-suite other than me. So if I need to talk to the CFO, I need to be able to talk finance. If I'm talking to the head of legal, I need to be able to talk legal language. So I need to understand all of their roles because none of them understand my role. They know generally what I'm supposed to do, but they don't understand the security landscape. They don't understand like half the things I do. So that is one thing that I think as a CISO, you have to do very well. I have to be able to, whenever I present anything, know who my audience is and write in their language. And if I don't, then they just don't listen to me.
Misconception is like my cousin. He calls me, he goes, "Hey, I broke up with my girlfriend, so I need to hack her Gmail account, help me." And I'm like, dude, I'm not a hacker. I mean,
you know all that stuff, yeah?
Not only I'm not a hacker, but I don't understand this offensive guy either. I mean, I don't know if he's here or not, but he did a red teaming with us, and he explained me maybe 1,500 times what he did, and I was like, "You are too smart for me. I don't understand what you have done." So that's exactly what was Kendra was saying. I mean, we don't know everything. And we are talking about I don't know. Well, you are working in a very huge organization, but in the financial institutes, they have the offensive, defensive, governance, compliance, and these people, they don't understand each other because their expertise is very different than one to each other. So I guess that's my own problem. My upper management, they think that I know everything, and every single time I need to get back to them, I was like, I don't have the answer, so I'll get back to you.
So I'm not a CISO. I work for CISOs.
Yeah, we were a team lead.
Yes. And I don't think that word means what you think it means comes to mind. It's about managing many people, multiple priorities, speaking different languages across the organization. It's not about getting to roll your sleeves up and do that thing that brought you into security initially. And I think from what I have seen from people I know, that has been one of the biggest frustrations. And it's management of people, management of business are very different skill sets. You can learn these things. It's not necessarily strengths. And sometimes that's not the path that you want to go down, but you find yourself wearing the CISO hat. And I would say if you have got a strong team around you that you can lean on and leverage and let people play to their strengths in support of you, you can cover those gaps.
And I will sum it up that those kind of roles means that you're between a rock and a hard place. And absolutely, Justin, you have to translate a lot, and and also from the technical teams that you interface with and upper management, then you have to have the confidence of both sides and play most of the time. You be the referee in some feuds sometime, but at the same matter that you have to keep that confidence from the team that they look upon you and say, are we doing the right thing? Okay, you may be not the right person that supervises them all the time, but if there's a technical thing, especially during an attack or an intervention, they look upon you. And especially the other side, upper management looks upon you. And are we secure or not? Will we, or have we spilled something or not? So, yeah, it kind of makes a fuzzy feeling in some way. All right, so I've exhausted my main questions, but I got a bonus question. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions for these guys, please prepare them because you'll be able to ask them in a few minutes. So, what would be the top tips you'd give a newly minted CISO? And by the same fact, any recommended books that he could then be reading on these rainy days?
The first tip that I would give is that you have to be a technical generalist. So that means that you need to know a lot about a lot of different kinds of technology. You don't need to necessarily know an amazing amount about a single one, but just like the panel said, you are expected to know everything. I have interviewed for lots of CISO roles, and the one thing that every company's always started with is we're looking for somebody deeply technical. Right, because they want you to know everything, because security is a very wide field. So that would be one top thing I would give. The second thing that I would say is you need to know how to write and speak very concisely. And what I mean by that is without jargon or other sort of security lingo that we've all picked up along the way, because if you do that to an audience that is not a security team, nobody will read or understand what you are saying. The third thing that I would recommend is you need to be able to lead through influence. You have to be very personable, and you have to build friendships and get people to trust you, because most of the time you or your team are not doing the work. If you cannot get people to follow your advice or implement your roadmap, you will not be successful. So those would be the three things.
Boy, that was excellent. Let's see. I would add to that, use the word no very, very sparingly. As much as there are oftentimes things that you see that you immediately throw up a red flag and you want to scream and say, why would you even come up with something like that? No is a word that you should try to remove from your vocabulary as much as possible, and instead find solutions and compensating controls that can help them on their path. Kind of like to what you said, we can't just lock down absolutely everything, especially in this world now where we're all so widely dispersed and all over the place. So that would be one thing, and I'm going to pass it on because Justin took all the good ones.
Yeah, but, we're talking about the new guy, Kendra, and
I knew why he jumped in.
you say for a new guy, he should never say no?
I mean, not never. I said use it sparingly. Very sparingly, because it's a great way, saying no, to immediately throw those relationships that you're trying to build right into the trash. So,
real quick, I would actually say I don't think you can say no as a new guy. I think that if you say no even once, I think there's going to be no trust. I think you have to go in with, I will help you find a solution. Right? Now, that's your real no, because the solution's not going to be what they're recommending. But I don't think you can say no. I agree with her.
Good one.
I guess I might be boring because I'm repeating myself. Get to know your business as much as possible. What is important for the business to protect? The second point is the communication. Communicate with the other teams. Talk to them about your projects, your roadmap, the impact on them. Most of the initiatives that we have on cybersecurity side, we don't implement. Infrastructure implements. So consider the load of the work that you are imposing to those resources during the year to come. So be so clear with them to be able, for them to be able to staff properly. When you are talking to your upper management, to CIO, to board, watch your words. Don't conclude quickly on an incident, event, or whatsoever. Try to gather all the evidence before going to talk to them. Because they are smart, they ask you the questions, and at some point you don't have answer, and you're going to be embarrassed.
These were all phenomenal. I mean, especially Justin, yours was the foundation of how to do this right, and the don't say no. And I would only add to it, learn who is in your organization. Know who to go to. That's going to be very important because you're going to need to build that collaboration and communication. Your people will always be your greatest strength.
And find your champions in your business across all portions of the organization. It's so helpful.
And why not also extend that you have to make yourself a great network of people that are outside of your organization that you can just call upon when you need some help, especially a second advice. Because when you're inside, most of the time you're just in that storm of ideas, and why not step out and see the forest and just, instead of banging your head on the same tree?
It's honestly something that the security industry is really bad at. We don't communicate enough, and we don't share the good stuff. But guess what? The bad guys are out there sharing everything, and they're always how many steps ahead of us? We have to share more.
What we're here for, right?
That's right. And there are trusted peer networks. Find out ISACs. You can find those kinds of organizations. They will really work with you, and especially in times of crisis.
All right. Do we have any questions from the crowd at this point? Come on, guys. Help me out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks for the panels. I just would like to know, do you have any recommended books? Because that was part of the question, and I'm really interested to learn some books or something like you recommend to us.
I have one, but it's not a security book, but it has been so foundational in helping me grow as a leader. Radical Candor is one of my favorite books of all time. Highly recommend it to everybody to read, no matter where you are in your professional journey.
I am also going to recommend a non-security book. It's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So it's a book for people who are interested in getting into leadership, and how advancing your career as a leader is quite a bit different than if you are like a security individual contributor. I thought it was a phenomenal book.
I'm actually reading that book currently, and I haven't done yet, but it's absolutely phenomenal. It's based on the experience of an American journalist working on different cybersecurity attacks. The name is "This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends," and I am absolutely amazed by that book.
My first book was called Cuckoo's Egg by Cliff Stahl. And this was a great story to awaken you back in the 80s, you know, back in the old days of the Soviet Empire that was trying to get the secrets out of the US. And this is how it explains to you, back in the days there were no internet, how they were able to piggyback on some whatever network the government funded, and they were able from East Germany go into the UCLA, even Livermore Labs in California, and get some whatever plans that were there. Great story to understand how one individual was able to gather all of the data, feed the federal agencies, and finally catch those spies. That was a great one. And the one I'm reading today and for the last weeks is called Battlefield Cyber. And this is a great one that's talking about the topics of today. How China is behaving, how is the cyber threat from Iran, North Korea, Russia, of course. But it gives you the insides of what's being done today by those threat actors, and also how to make yourself a little bit more ready. So things from the past, things from today, helps you a lot. Prepare yourself for what's coming down the road. So that will be my recommendation, my books to recommend to these new guys. Or gals, because there's gals, right? Any other questions? Yes.
Any thoughts on how to handle or address the cybersec professional shortage?
Yeah, so I heard somebody say recently that there actually isn't a cybersecurity talent shortage. We're just narrow-minded on who we think cybersecurity professionals are. And I thought that was really a good statement. I mean, I came from infrastructure and help desk. So I think where I look for cybersecurity professionals now are people who software engineers, people who are network engineers. So there's a lot of places that you could find a cybersecurity professional if they're interested in it. I think what we need to do as cybersecurity professionals is make it interesting for other people to come over to our thing, to our career, and choose the dark side of security. So, which is, maybe not as fun as what they're doing. Who knows? But I think we just need to be more creative.
I'll jump right in there. I'm one of those people who came over to the dark side a few years ago. Totally non-technical background in that regard. What I've learned myself. I went from the pink collar ghetto. I'll learn making tables in WordPerfect. I'll set up that database. I'll put that modem card in that thing. Betcha. And it has been an adventure ever since. Passion. Passion is what brings us here. And we are curious. Oh my gosh. And we are voracious learners. And we love to listen and pick up on things. We are truly weird. We see stuff that nobody else sees, and then we wonder why people are not seeing it or look at us funny. But that helps us do our jobs. So it's not the person who comes out with necessarily all the right letters and the degree. It's the person who comes in who tells you this crazy story that actually accomplished something, and they are committed to it with this passion.
Do you want me to go or you? I'm very passionate about this. There is not a cybersecurity shortage. There is a fundamental problem with how we're posting positions and the types of people that we're looking for to fill those positions, and having wildly unrealistic expectations, especially for those people who are looking for a chance to get into this field. I get so frustrated every time I look at a job description and it is this unicorn person. Justin, you said it right off the bat when you're interviewing for CISO roles. We're looking for someone who's deeply technical. Then you don't understand what you need in this role. And so, in my opinion, there is not a shortage. There is a lack of mentorship. There is a serious desire in the market right now to get the most bang for your buck. And the more skills that you can compile into one person means that you are going to be looking for someone who has 15, 20 plus years of experience. And then you have this whole talent pool of folks coming out of school, coming out of different industries, and their perspective is really important and needed, but we don't have the time, we don't have the resources to actually train them to do the job that we need to do.
I totally agree. It's all about passion. And I had an intern last summer. The guy was switching from construction to IT, and he finished the first year of school, and he was looking for an internship, and then I got him. At the beginning, I had no idea to what level was his knowledge. So after 2 weeks, we figured out that no, he doesn't know the foundation of IT. The guy was not able to distinguish between a private IP and public IP. He was asking what is a NAT, how does it work. We coached him. I swear, a month later, he was like a kid in the candy store. He developed the passion in himself. He actually found a shadow IT in our organization. He was like, do we have Mac server? I was like, what are you talking about? It's impossible. He goes, I found a machine and it's kind of rogue. And the MAC address of this machine is Apple, so it has to be a Mac. And guess what? Someone had installed the Mac machine somewhere in the organization. I was doing not illegal stuff, but something that IT was not aware of that. The guy, he left, he unfortunately, he returned to school, but I was like, you're gonna come back next summer, right? So I think he was passionate. We coached him, and we put him in a success situation, and now he's gonna come back to cybersecurity. He doesn't want to do anything else in his in his life.
I'm going to finish off with my personal example. I was a soldier. I was training people to shoot rifles, fire bombs away. And at one point, I traded my rifle for a keyboard. And I started that passion. And there was nobody to coach me back then because there was no trade. Nobody knew what it was to structure in a network, to convert a public IP address into a private one, and so on and so on. And it got me to the point I got to be the first CISO in Quebec because of that passion. And that passion was, I tried to, and I got a few of my ex-employees and colleagues here, I tried to influence that passion downstream as well as upstream to convince upper management that cybersecurity was foremost important, just like I explained earlier. And if you don't have the opportunity to just spread it out, and this is why I got myself involved in the medias here in Quebec and across Canada to speak about cybersecurity anywhere we can. And then I try just to let people know, especially in the medias, talking about cybersecurity is as important as it is to talk about sports and finance. And still to this day, it's hard to pierce that bubble of just, we're just okay and comfortable talking about these topics, but why not learn about this new topic? And we have to make it sexy, just like you said, so it is attractable. Because we all know during the holidays, people pick our brains. You work in computers, right? Can you tell me how to fix this? And I have this problem and so on. We all been there, and we're all going to anticipate it's coming down that we have to talk about technology with these, our related relatives and our friends. But again, if they have the insight to talk and ask us those questions, I gladly answer them, so they'll feel more secure and they'll be a better digital citizen to use these type of technologies. But if we don't start there, it will be just, again, talking about the same old topic of, do you have a right password? Does it have different characters? And so on and so on. Last question here. Yes.
Yeah, so it seems like a lot of executives and even boards are not taking cybersecurity as seriously as they should. I don't think any of you ever have the budget that you'd like to have in any role. And it seems to me that a lot of the execs don't really suffer the consequences themselves because they move on to other roles at other organizations. So how do you guys deal with the fact that you essentially get to have a resume generating event in the event of a breach, and that kind of, it seems like the CISO or the CTO is expected to, ritually commit career suicide and leave the organization?
I don't know if I would say in my professional experience that the executive suite and the board doesn't take it seriously. I think the reality of the situation is that most data security incidents don't cost a lot of money. We hear about the very large ones, but I've worked with a lot of insurance carriers where I've looked at thousands and thousands and thousands of data breaches. Most data breaches do not cost a company a lot of money. In fact, in my lifetime working, that's 20 years as a security professional, I haven't lost a lot of money. So that is the problem. Since most data security incidents don't cost a lot of money, I had a CEO, not at a company I worked at, once say to me, Justin, it's just business as usual. So realistically, until that sort of 99th percentile data breach happens, which it doesn't happen to most companies, I think that companies are spending what they think they need to stop that 99th percent breach from happening. So that's kind of the look I take on it. If I took the other look where I didn't think they cared, I probably wouldn't be in this field. But I think the reality of the situation is I've modeled a lot of actual breaches that I've been a part of, and most of them don't cost enough for the company to radically change. And I'll use one quick example here. I won't say the company because I was under Chatham House rules, but it's a company that every single person in here knows, and they had a tiny security team, and you would be shocked to hear how small it was. They had this 99th percentile breach, and they were given a check for $100 million US to go and build that program that they always wanted. The problem is when the person who had suffered this gave the talk, they said, this is how you should build your security program, before they mentioned that they had that big check to do whatever they wanted. But I think it's really just a matter of companies are managing to what they think, you know, their losses are going to be. And if losses increase, then you get more. So that's somewhat the sad reality of the world.
I think it's not the case for all the companies, though. I mean, there are some companies that the boards, they are so aware and they contribute to cybersecurity budget. Maybe they are not the majority in the market. But I think there are two types of organizations. I was in a get-together CISOs last week in Quebec. And one of our peers, he was explaining the breach that they had lived. And he was saying that his team, they had ransomware, 100% loss, encryption. And he was saying that his team was working 17, 18 hours per day to restore the servers. And 3 days after the breach, the HR communicated to all these employees that, hey, by the way, the overtime is not paid. I mean, this is, yeah, exactly. Delete, rollback, and encrypt everything and get out of here. So, on the other hand, I mean, we see some organizations that we are not over budget, but I mean, we spend still quite amount of money to secure the organization. So I guess there is a mix of both of them, and a breach can help, and having the board members being part of another organization who have been breached, that helps also.
So you don't necessarily have to learn that lesson yourself then? Okay. So really great question. For me, I mean, we've all probably heard this phrase at some point, right? It's not if, but when a breach occurs, right? So when I'm trying to get funding for my security programs, I really, similarly to the word no, try not to even use the word breach. I like to understand the business. I like to understand the contractual and regulatory requirements for the business, and then try and relate back the security program that we're trying to build to that, because that really ultimately, I think, makes more sense to the board as to why we need to do these things. And I had an example in an organization that I started in not, a few examples ago that was not meeting their regulatory requirements. And so I had to present that as, hey, this is a major problem. We're going to have to spend some money here in order to fix this. And if we don't, here are the consequences. You could potentially lose your reputation in this space. It could be company ending. It may not be a big capital B breach that brings you down, but there are other things that can, and so you need to invest the proper funding in order to make sure that you're taking care of those holes.
I don't really have much more to add other than in a highly regulated field, that word reputation is paramount, and even more so than the dollar figures attached with the fines that can follow. But reputation is something that you earn, and it is very, very hard to gain that back, whatever industry or business, whatever size you are.
Everyone, on behalf of the crowd here, I would like to thank you very much for your time here. It's been a very interesting panel. Everyone, the panel. So how about we take a 10-minute break to stretch out, get some fresh coffee.